friends, so today I am going to talk about width of fabric, and that's a term that gets used a lot in different quilt patterns and primarily in the cutting instructions or the cutting tables. So let's talk about it. WOF stands for width of fabric, and that is the width of the fabric from selvage to selvage. Typically, quilting cotton is about 45 inches wide, but it can vary. Now here's half a yard of fabric straight from the bolt, and as you can see here, it's been folded in half, as most fabric is. Usually when you go to the store, it looks very pretty on the bolts, and it's folded in half. So in order to find the width of fabric, we are going to measure from the selvage to the fold, and this one, it's 22 1/4. So the full width of fabric for this particular fabric, or the WOF, it's 44.5 inches. However, as you can see here, that includes the selvage. And that's about half an inch on either side of the fabric. So another term that you may see along WOF is usable width, and that is the width of the fabric minus selvage, because that typically gets cut away. In this particular example, my usable width of fabric then would be, so it's 21.5 inches, that would be 42.5 inches of usable width of fabric for this particular fabric. Now most patterns generally assume either 40 to 42 inches of usable width, because like I said, the width of fabric can change from manufacturer to manufacturer, and also the width or how large the selvages are on different cuts of fabric can also change. So let's talk about how you will see this in patterns. So a lot of the times you will see on a cutting table or the cutting instructions, it will say cut 3 strips that are 3 inches by WOF, or width of fabric. So that means that you will be cutting a strip that is 3 inches by the width of fabric. And let me show you how to do that really quick. So the first thing that you want to do is press this so there are no weird folds or wrinkles on your fabric. Sometimes that can happen on the bolt or when you store your fabric in your stash. And if you're going to be using starch, always starch your fabric before you cut your fabric. That will give you the most accurate cuts. So next, you are going to line up your selvages so they are as straight as possible. And this is going to shift a little bit, and that's okay. So if your fabric does shift and you get this little lip here, I will make sure that you press this nice and tidy. So I'm going to go do that really quick. So now this is nice and pressed, and you can see everything's lining up very nicely. And if you are fortunate enough to have a large ruler like this one is 24 inches long. You can, let's see here, line up your ruler and cut. However, I know not all of us have these large rulers and large cutting mats, so I'm going to show you how actually I do it, even though I do have the space, just because this is how I learned to cut my fabric, and this is just how I'm used to doing it. So here I made sure that my selvages are nice and lined up, and then I take this nice straight edge and fold it and line it up with my selvage as straight as possible. Then I take my 12.5 by 12.5 ruler. This is my favorite ruler. And I line up this, whoops, kind of hard to see, this bottom line here, so the 12-inch line with the bottom, that folded bottom of my fabric, and I square up my fabric, like cutting away this kind of jagged edge. I then turn my fabric over so this nice straight edge is not on my left, and I am able to line it up. Now I have to cut 2 3-inch wide strips of fabric. So what I'm going to do is line up my 6-inch line here, and then I'm going to make sure that I have a line straight on with that folded edge. I want to make sure everything's lined up nice and straight. I cut at the 6, and then I'm going to cut again at the 3. So now I have 2 strips of fabric that are 3 inches by width of fabric. And at this point, I can cut away the selvage and use them on my pattern. So yeah, just remember that width, WOF stands for the width of fabric, and that's the measurement of the fabric from selvage to selvage, and most fabric on the bowl comes folded. So you can measure from the selvage to the fold and then multiply by 2, and that will give you your width of fabric. And I hope that you found this helpful. Happy sewing!